Hello my royal lovelies, welcome back to the channel, and of course, as always, welcome to my home. Today I want to talk about the power of apology with regards, and also take a look at the royal visit Kenya that the King and Queen Camilla recently took. It's just ended today, so we'll take a look back, we'll relate it to the Mau Mau Uprising and put everything into context. But first of all, I want to say, in the UK today, it is freezing. I've had to put my cardigan on, I've had to get my cup of coffee out, I've had to put on a comfy, cosy, warm backdrop. I bet William and Catherine don't have this problem at Adelaide Cottage, do they? I bet they've got the heating on full blast all the time. Anyway, for us mere mortals that have to watch the pennies, we sit here shivering in the cold. Anyway, never mind. So, unless you've been living under a rock somewhere, you will be aware that the King Charles III and Queen Camilla undertook their first Commonwealth visit, state visit, since Charles ascended the throne. By the way, you can see Molly in the background just there. She's having her mid-afternoon bath. So I think there has been a lot of speculation over, where would King Charles go on his first state visit within the Commonwealth. And I think a lot of people thought initially that the first state visit of his reign would be to a Commonwealth country, and of course it wasn't. It was that kind of French-German tour, and of course the French part had to be delayed because of civil unrest. So what's happened has not really been what people have been expecting. Now, we have to look at the context of a foreign visit. A foreign state visit is not a personal, not a private tour. It is at the bequest of the British government, whatever that government might be of the day. It was the same in Queen Elizabeth II's reign, and it is the same in King Charles III's reign. Currently, we have a Conservative government with the Prime Minister is Rishi Sunak. That could change at any moment, who knows? Who knows where all that's heading, where politics in Britain, don't even get me started. So whatever politicians are around of the day, whoever is in power, gets to decide or have influence over where these foreign visits take place. And it's all political. So I bet you're screaming at me through the screens, but the king, the sovereign, isn't supposed to be political. No, they're not. They're not on a personal level. However, they can be used as a political tool, as a political pawn. Even though they're technically head of state, they can be used by the elected government of the day. Remember, this is a constitutional monarchy, and they can be used as what is known as a soft power. And in the UK, we tend to use our British royal family, the sovereign, and members of the family representing the country as a kind of familial face on a very public stage. So whereas the politicians may change, every 4 years, every 5 years, goodness knows how many prime ministers we've got through in the past 10 years. I mean, it begs belief. But anyway, the one thing that is kind of constant is the royal family on a world stage. And that is one of the benefits of having a constitutional monarchy. So we send the King and Queen, we send William and Catherine, Edward and Sophie, whoever, Princess Anne, off around the globe to kind of make those very personal connections between state and family and country that they might be visiting. So there will be political reasons for visiting Kenya first as a Commonwealth country. Now, I'm not entirely sure what all those reasons are. That is only known to the politicians. But I would imagine that trade, investment, trade deals, post-Brexit trade deals will be at the forefront, but also shoring up those old familial ties. Now, Britain and Kenya have a very long but checkered history. And this is something that I want to talk about. So I'm not going to talk about everything that the King and Queen got up to on the state visit. I will be popping photos here and there and everywhere. But the one thing that was vitally important at the very start of this royal visit was King Charles's speech.
Mabibi na mabwana, hamjambo, niaje, ni fuhara yangu. I am enormously grateful to you, Mr. President, Madam First Lady, for your most generous invitation to make this state visit.
And there was lots of talk about whether or not he would apologise for Britain's involvement in Kenya's quest to become independent. Now, a lot of people don't know a lot about all of this, so I'm going to actually go back and talk a little bit about how Kenya became independent and what Britain's involvement in that was. So from October 1952 to December 1959, Kenya was in a state of emergency arising from the, and I hope I'm saying this correctly, the Mau Mau rebellion against British rule. The Mau Mau, also known as the Kenya Land and Freedom Army, were primarily Kikuyu people. Again, I hope I've said that correctly. I do apologise if I haven't. During the colonial administrators' crackdown, over 11,000 rebel fighters had been killed, along with 100 British troops and 2,000 Kenyan loyalist soldiers. The governor requested and obtained British and African troops, including the King's African Rifles. The British began counter-insurgency operations. In May 1953, General Sir George Erskine took charge as Commander-in-Chief of the colony's armed forces with the personal backing of Winston Churchill. So there was more than 80,000 were killed or held in detention camps without trial, often subject to brutal treatment. The Home Guard formed the core of the government strategy, and it was composed of loyalist Africans, no foreign forces such as the British Army and the King's African Rifles. So there's a lot more to it than just that, but basically they don't teach you this in schools. So this is some history that I had to kind of go over and familiarise myself with and put it into context about the power of apology in the modern day era for historical wrongdoings. Now, the one thing that kind of struck me is actually how recent this is. This actually happened in Queen Elizabeth II's reign. So there will be people that are still alive today. There will be people that are still that have family members that aren't too distant in the past, and they will still be kind of affected by this. So we're not talking about apologies for things that happened 200 years ago. And I think personally, I do have strong feelings about retrospective apologies for things that happened a long time ago, because most countries, if you go back in history far enough, will have some kind of wrongdoing that they have done that they could potentially apologise for. But the problem that I have with that is that often when it's such a long time ago, so not in this case, but in a long time ago, the people that were wronged are long gone, and the people that did the wronging are long gone. And I kind of struggle with, should an apology be from the people that perpetrated those crimes to the people that they perpetrated those crimes or wrongdoings to? And when we get to the point where it's like several hundred years ago, how much is an apology actually an apology? When really, I think what's more important is a country recognising that there was wrongdoing in the first place. I think that is more powerful, the recognition of the wrongdoing, rather than necessarily an apology that should potentially have come from the people who did the actual wrongdoing in the first place. However, in this case, it is still relatively recent in history. So people were speculating, would there be an apology from the king? and what would that look like if it came? So we had the speech. I'm not going to read all of the speech because it is quite lengthy, but I've sectioned out a part that relates to what I have just spoken about. So King Charles said,
"It is the intimacy of our shared history that has brought our people together. However, we must also acknowledge the most painful times of our long and complex relationship. The wrongdoings of the past are a cause of the greatest sorrow and the deepest regret. There were abhorrent and unjustifiable acts of violence committed against Kenyans as they waged, as you said at the United Nations, a painful struggle for independence and sovereignty. And for that, there can be no excuse. In coming back to Kenya, it matters greatly to me that I should deepen my own understanding of these wrongs, and that I meet some of those whose lives and communities were so grievously affected. None of this can change the past, but by addressing our history with honesty and openness, we can perhaps demonstrate the strength of our friendship today. And in so doing, we can, I hope, continue to build an ever closer bond for the years ahead.
He also said, as Jomo Kenyatta said, our children may learn about the heroes of the past. Our task is to make ourselves the architects of the future. So I think my understanding of the whole speech, not just that part, but the whole speech was looking to the future and recognising the past, the shared history, the wrongdoings. And I think it was the right terminology to use. Let's not forget, it is not the King's personal message. It is a personal message, it's from him. But this would have had approval and consent from the British government. It would have had to have passed kind of what the message that they wanted to send as well. Remember, the King is being used as a soft power. So although I think it does come from King Charles's own heart, from his own mind, we will never know how far King Charles would have gone had the government not obviously been involved. But I think he's played a really good card. I think he's addressed the issue. He said that, about learning more, deepening understanding, but recognised that wrongdoing. And I think that is the right way to go with this. So we didn't get a full apology. Now let me know in the comment section, because I know lots of people are going to have your own thoughts, opinions, and I'm especially open to hearing from Kenyans about this tour, this visit and this speech. How did you think it went down? Do you think that King Charles and the British government should have gone further and made a full apology? Or do you think that this is the building blocks, the architect of the future with regards to British and Kenyan relationships today in the here and now? I'm really interested to know everyone's thoughts and opinions. But I do think that it was the right way to go. Now, King Charles and Queen Camilla met so many people over this Kenyan tour that I can't mention all of it without going into great detail and making this video very, very long. But one of the highlights for me, and I'm going to pull out something that I thought was very poignant, was the King presented. Now, I'm speechless at his age. 117-year-old veteran Samuel Ngai Maburi. Now, I hope I've said that correctly. Again, my pronunciation of the Kenyan names is shocking and appalling, so I do apologise. But he is 117 years old. My goodness, wow. And he presented him with the Replacement Campaign Medal at Carriacou Commonwealth War Graves in Nairobi. So apparently, I think the backstory is that he had to give up or destroy his medals for fear at the time of retribution for people, his own people, considering him being a colonial sympathiser. So he got rid of the medals. But now he's being represented with those medals. Obviously, times are different, times have changed, and he can now have those medals to represent his bravery in what happened with pride. And I think that was a really nice thing for King Charles and Queen Camilla to be able to do. And it represents a lot. Just that one person getting those medals back kind of represents quite a lot. So I thought that was really good. Another moment that I think has been picked up on social media is Queen Camilla's footwear. Now, she has been rocking a few looks on this Kenyan tour. And one of the things you have to remember about Queen Camilla, and there's been some unfair comparisons to a very young Queen Elizabeth when she visited Kenya, Princess Diana as well when she's been on, or rather the former Princess of Wales, Diana, Princess of Wales, looking very glamorous and young. Now, we've got to remember that Queen Camilla is 75. She also does not do well in the heat. So she's travelled to a hot country. She doesn't like flying. She doesn't like the heat. And there she is, representing the country, doing her duty. And the thing that you have to remember also is she has bunions. We are led to believe that she has some kind of foot issue that relates to bunions, painful sort of toe issues. So she has to have pairs of sturdy footwear. Now, she's been on and off kind of different terrain. Not terrain, a terrain is cooking. Terrain is what I wanted to say. Uneven terrain. So having a sturdy pair of footwear, not having your feet in terrains, but having them in a sturdy pair of shoes is what she needed to do. So she's been wearing these kind of sturdy ankle boots. I think Mrs. Doubtfire had a pair back in the movie. Anyway, she's wearing these sturdy footwear with I think Queen Camilla always looks really good, to be quite honest. So I don't know what the fuss is with those very unfair comparisons. She's been wearing lots and lots and lots of lovely outfits. Anyway, the Kenyan tour has ended today, and the royal family said thank you to everyone who welcomed the King and Queen to Nairobi and Mombasa during #Royal Visit Kenya. So I do implore everyone to go to the royal family social medias and take a look at all of those pictures and video clips. It's been a successful tour. I think obviously the aim of it was to strengthen those bonds, to address that kind of shared history of the past. King Charles, like I said, I think he played it really well at the very start of the tour. So kind of getting that out in the open, and then having a really successful royal visit. So now that the tour has ended, we'll see a lot more activity from the other royals. Now, hello, so as you can see, I am updating this video. I filmed the last part of the video just as the royal tour Kenya had come to its conclusion. But a few days later, some new information came to light that I wanted to talk about and update. So this information I did not know when I was filming the previous part of the video. And then there's a few interesting things that I want to kind of get stuck into. So, first of all, the first thing that came to light that I just find completely crazy and silly is about red carpets and the usage of red carpets for visiting heads of state, dignitaries, people of importance, when it comes to countries hosting them, officially or even unofficially. So traditionally, when a visiting head of state comes to pretty much any country around the world, there are lots of I would say, protocols that are put in place, not necessarily set in stone. These can be changed and altered at any time, but usually there are these kind of protocols that show respect. It's all about respect to your visitors. And one of those things typically is the rolling out of the red carpet. We do it in the UK here when we are hosting important people, in particular on state visits and occasions. Other countries do it all over the world. You've only got to look at photographs, including Kenya. Now, Kenya are well known for being very, very welcoming and rolling out the red carpet when they have guests and visitors, especially as important as heads of state, which include, of course, King Charles and his consort, Queen Camilla. So it didn't come as any great surprise to me when the red carpet was rolled out. It's what the Kenyans do, it's what other countries and peoples do all over the world. But a particular journalist that I shall remain nameless kind of took it upon himself to post all over Twitter about the optics of a red carpet with King Charles and Queen Camilla walking when it had been laid out on some bare earth and soil on one of their visits. Now, bearing in mind they'd walked the red carpet on lots of previous engagements in Kenya, but this particular one upset said journalist and made him write a very vicious kind of tweet that's aimed at, I think, stirring up racial divisions, shall we say. So I want to know, first of all, what you think about the optics of not just the British, king and queen walking a red carpet, but anybody in general. Do we think red carpets are outdated in general? Do we think that, why bother? Why bother? In this modern day and age, do we need red carpets? I certainly, in my mind, the red carpet with King Charles and Queen Camilla did not stir up any kind of colonial connotations. It was just the Kenyans being polite and welcoming and hospitable people, for which they are known for. And for me, it was nothing more than that. It is what it is. It is what it looks like. It's, a visiting head of state walking on a red carpet that's been rolled out for them. So I think it was a lot of baiting going on by said journalist, whipping the internet up into a frenzy. And I say the internet because the rest of people with common sense can see it for what it is. Kindness. It was kindness on behalf of the Kenyan people. So I'm going to park that one. I think the whole red carpet story was just stupid, but I would like to know your thoughts and opinions on whether or not red carpets in general are outdated. So the next story that I want to talk about that made the news is about King Charles and Queen Camilla were on an engagement. Now, the engagement was, and I did actually look up because this story kind of brought me lots and lots of questions because it doesn't make sense. And I will say at the start of this story, it does not make any sense whatsoever. So, on the official itinerary, now this is an official itinerary posted on the UK government website, it says that their majesties, and I'll pop a photo up here and there, their majesties will lay a wreath, at the tomb of the unknown warrior. What transpired, of course, was that there were photographs of Queen Camilla sat in the car, which got everyone outraged on the internet. I say the internet again because people were not outraged in the rest of the world, in real life. So she stayed in the car, and then King Charles got out, and I think he laid the wreath on his own. So I was thinking to myself, why? Why would the itinerary say their majesties and only his majesty got out? Now, there could be a whole host of reasons for last-minute programme changes. I am not party or to what those were, but I imagine there must be something, because Camilla was there. The Queen was there. So why did she not get out? Now, of course, people on social media were saying it's because she has such contempt for the Kenyan people, blah, blah, blah. Totally not true, because already prior to that event, she'd already been attending lots of events, meeting everyday Kenyans. And obviously after that event, she carried on her programme, meeting everyday Kenyans. So I'm brushing that aside because I don't think that's the reason. There must have been another reason. Like I say, I don't know what that is, but there can be last minute programme changes. It just doesn't really make any sense why she was just sat in the car if she was there. But she did get out after the wreath laying, because it was made, people on Twitter were kind of saying that she just didn't get out at all. Well, she did, because I went back and found the president of Kenya's tweet, or people posting on his behalf, showed full well that Camilla did get out of the car and carry on with that day's engagement. So that leads me to sensibly and logically think that something happened. There was some kind of reason. I don't know what it is, but there was some kind of last minute change. Now, if anyone does know or has heard any rumours as to what that reason is, please let me know in the comment section below. But I'm just clarifying that Camilla did get out of the car, but she just did not take part in the wreath laying. Now, another thing that whilst I was researching and digging why Camilla didn't get out of the car, I came across lots of Kenyans actually who didn't know why there is a tomb of the unknown warrior. Lots of people were saying, why not lay the wreath of a known soldier, someone that was known? Well, let me just give everyone a little bit of brief history about the unknown soldier. Lots of countries have an unknown warrior soldier. We have one laid to rest in Westminster Abbey in London, and lots of countries have an unknown warrior buried or interred somewhere. Now, it's very important because on the battlefield, often when bodies are recovered, people fighting for their country, there are unknown bodies that cannot be identified. And what happened all over the world is that a selection of bodies were recovered, unknown. One was selected at random, and then the body was interred. Now, the reason for this is so that all of those families of people that lost their lives fighting for their countries who were not recovered, those families now have a focal point to pay their respects to, because the unknown soldier, the unknown warrior, could be their relative. So it gives everyone a focal point, which is why lots of countries have an unknown warrior and why a wreath was laid at the tomb of the Kenyan unknown warrior. So just a little bit of history about why we have unknown warriors all over the world. Now, the next story came actually from a Kenyan journalist, and he tweeted a whole series of tweets. I will screenshot some of them and put them up as I'm talking. Now, he basically, I'm paraphrasing because you can go and read his tweet and make up your minds whether or not you believe what he's saying. But he did tweet that there were differences in treatment between the UK press, the visiting UK press, and the resident Kenyan press. Now, again, I've been trying to kind of rack my brains trying to think logically about why there would be certain differences. Now, the one difference that he talks about is the segregation between the Kenyan journalists and the British journalists with regards to buses. So I racked my brain, why would the British press be on one bus and the Kenyans be on another? I think it has a lot to do with the locations of where they're picked up and dropped off from. I think it's that simple. So I would imagine that the British press were being housed in a particular hotel or whatever it might be, probably all accommodation together. So when they were picked up in the morning to go on all of these events following King Charles and Camilla, they would have got on the same bus because they're staying in the same place. So That kind of logically makes sense. Plus, they would have had all their belongings, equipment, all that kind of thing on their bus. So for security reasons, and just ease of transport, and obviously returning back to the hotel when the day was over, it made sense, I think, to have the British press all in one kind of spot, if you like. And then obviously the resident Kenyan photographers, reporters, journalists, TV crews, whatever, I wouldn't imagine, would have been staying in the same location. So they would have had perhaps alternative transports, maybe their own transport coming together and then being picked up by the bus. So I can kind of see why there could have been separate buses, although social media again going crazy saying that it's segregation, blah blah blah. I don't think that's true. I think there is probably a very logical reason, such as the one I've just discussed, for the transport. Now, the one criticism that I can't explain, that I do think is really weird and strange, and if true, is quite unforgivable really, is the food element of it. So the person who's making all these series of tweets claims that the British journalists got fed first. So the food that was provided apparently was a joint collaboration between the UK and Kenya, so jointly funded apparently. I don't know if that is true or not, but that's what I've heard. So it makes sense to me that, when it comes to meal times, that everyone probably should just get up and get fed at the same time, unless there is a specific reason why it had to be done the other way. Now, again, trying to rack my brains thinking about it, the one reason I've thought of is that it could have been, again, the Kenyans being hospitable and letting their guests go first. It could be just something as simple as that. Or it could be logistically the British press had to go off and do something first, although I think that's more unlikely. So, that's one thing. Personally, I think they should have been fed at the same time. The second claim was that there wasn't enough food, so that when the British press had their food, that there wasn't anything left for the Kenyan staff. Now, of course, I cannot corroborate whether that is true or not. And then they said that when they were provided food, it was leftover scraps with used toothpicks and things in the containers. Well, if that is true, then that is inexcusable. And I think there was a dramatic lack of planning, and a lack of good grace, I have to say. But being a collaboration between Kenya and the UK with regards to the organisation of it, I don't think the criticism can fall in any one direction. It is joint. If that failed, then it was a joint failing rather than, I think, a singular one. So there were a few things behind the scenes that I think perhaps may not have gone as well as what it could have done. But all of that said, the one thing that I've taken away from this Kenyan visit, and also William and Catherine's Caribbean tour, that ill-fated Caribbean tour, is that royal tours, once the happy-go-lucky kind of, well-planned but happy-go-lucky events, are now going to be extremely criticised and picked over, which is sad, because the whole idea of these foreign visits and foreign tours is for nations to strengthen their bonds of friendship. And what we don't want to see is this kind of really picking apart of and dissecting, looking for minor, affronts, waiting for the easily offended to be offended by something when there wasn't any offence meant. That is what we're going to see. And that, these last kind of two previous tours have shown me that times are changing, times have changed, everything is going to be picked apart. Now, again, we have to remember, these foreign tours are organised jointly. Everything would have been pre-approved. Last minute changes can happen, do happen, have happened in the past. But there is definitely the watchword of optics. What do things look like? What could things be construed of? And I think it's a really sad state of affairs where now the organisers of these tours are going to have to look with almost helicopter vision about how the really negative people out there could negatively spin things, how things are going to look. Which is why I asked the question, do we think that red carpets are outdated? For anybody, doesn't matter who they are, is that a relic of the past, something that has days gone by, shall we say? Anyway, I wanted to update that video, so I'm going to pop back to me now and I will end the video. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, then please give it a big old thumbs up. Don't forget to share on social media. And of course, do hit the bell so that you know whenever I upload a new video. So from me, to you all, and goodbye.